Hey, let's do a wrap-up session review for Empires of the Middle Ages. I was running out of space on the last video and figured it's easier if I break these up. Alright, so first of all, I think I've said this before, this is one of my favorite games of all time. It's definitely seen too little love in, say, the last decade or so. Much of that because I wasn't gaming at all, but it's been a long time since I played a game of this, of any kind. Now, you saw, if you were watching the videos, the grand campaign. I actually think a lot of the scenarios play a lot better than the grand campaign does, in terms of historicity, and in terms of balance, etc. Not that balance is really that important in the game. There's so much luck in the game that balance doesn't really make a lot of sense. I mean, if you have an even chance, but it could all end on one play of a good a good Year of Plenty or Year of Famine card for you, that could swing things. And in the game we saw just now, there was a 4-point difference between the two top players. So a card could easily have changed who won without a problem. Now, it's not the kind of game I feel like you walk away with saying, yeah, I won it, feeling like you really had to work hard to do that. Being in the top of the pack, though, probably does require some skill and some good management techniques and diplomacy, especially in some of the longer scenarios, where it isn't just going to be, I've got a couple of rounds that were really lucky for me. Alright, so some thoughts that I had from this, and this isn't really going to be a review. I mean, it's a very... I think you get more of a review by watching the games. This is just really some thoughts about it. 7 players is really pushing it, adding that extra set of counters. Not so much... Some of it is just playing solitaire. Playing solitaire with 5 is really easy. Playing solitaire with 7, for me, there's sort of a limit there. But more because of the event deck. You go through almost the whole event deck with 7 players on each turn. And I think that kind of changes the way the game feels entirely. I'd already noted at some other point that the 2-player game, the first scenario, is very different in feel from any of the others because of the way the cards work. The sustainable growth of wealth, it's possible under the basic rules to set yourself up so that you can just constantly make money. If you don't tinker with your economy too much, if you spend money to make money, you can keep yourself in a pretty good shape and just start piling up the income. And we saw some places in the game where a good leader or just good positioning got somebody to where they were making $15 or more a turn for a long period of time. And that's hard to spend unless you go to war with someone. So as long as you're not expending your money, especially in the campaign game, you can amass what seem like unreasonable amounts of money. Now, I had my little special rule to help mitigate that. Here's a problem. With this is something I've never seen anybody do, but people who play some of the CDGs and maybe things like Age of Renaissance might be somewhat tempted to use a counting cards trick. If you count the cards in the year cards and can maybe come up with some kind of mechanism for keeping track of what's already been played, that might very well determine what you should and shouldn't do just to improve your odds. I really don't like that about it. I think if anybody ever did that, it would probably ruin the game for me for that session completely. But I think it's definitely a possibility. You could just watch, hey, you know, how many of these cards have gone? Should I be doing something risky at all? One of the feelings of the game that might really be despicable to a lot of players is there's this feeling of futility. Especially in the long game, but even in the scenarios. You might manage to get your country into good shape, but it's going to fall again, which is why the conversions are so valuable, because those are victory points that aren't going to be taken away from you. And that's what we saw. The guys with the conversions are the guys who were ahead. Everybody else managed to get kind of their balance. The system is really, really fast playing. However, in the sense that once people know it, I've seen a lot of analysis paralysis going on in this game, and there's no reason for it. There's nothing you can do. You can't figure out what is the best move. You just can't. But when you try to do something, it's just so fast. You flip a card, boom, it happens, it doesn't. You do the calculation, you flip a card. That's it. Each player's turn should take a couple minutes at most. A normal scenario that goes maybe 10, 15 rounds should probably be over easily within 6 hours. But I've seen games start dragging. The game is really lousy if people slow down too much. It is really bad. Okay, here's another one though. With that fast playing system, at the same time, somebody made a note about the new version being fiddly and this one maybe being less so. I really doubt this one is less so. I think this game has a lot of the things that people will call fiddly, and it even gets to the point of annoying me. When you flip over a Year of Plenty and you have to move, 6, 8 countries, and then you flip over the Year of Famine a little later in the same round, and you have to move them right back. Ruling moves things up. Bad events, bad actions move things down. Things are just constantly moving around in it. And sometimes it's cool, sometimes it's kind of annoying. Okay, one thing that got left out of the game first of all, the Crusades are a problem in the game. They almost never happen. They're very unlikely, and I feel like that's not at all historical. But also, it'd be kind of nice if the game included more of North Africa and Egypt. North Africa would allow you to maybe squelch the Saracens, who are just kick-ass throughout it. I've seen optional rules to help control it. But also, there were crusades into Egypt, into North Africa. Those options should be available, I think, to the players, especially the Egyptian crusade. Money doesn't reflect, I think, the medieval economy well. It's too important in the game. It's too valuable, too useful. You can spend money and get good stuff. That's actually something that's at the core of the game, and I don't think there's a way of fixing it. But no one but the Byzantines, as far as I know, could just throw money and get an army. And even they had trouble by the later periods of this game in managing that. At the end of the game, like I said, if you draw a Year of Plenty card, hey, look, I got 5 extra victory points. I just won because of that. That could bug some people. There's almost a natural limit to the size of the empires, and I think this is actually really cool. You can't conquer the world. As you get bigger, it's harder and harder to rule your empire, and that's actually key to feudalism. Is because the bonds are all personal, you can't extend it over some large empire. And the countries that managed it, Poland, for example, historically, ended up very, very loosely configured because of that, and probably fairly poor as well. I got something else. Territory should move to base. I have no idea what that is. There's a lot of things that are little pieces in the campaign game that I think are kind of bothersome. I find that those little issues go away largely when you're playing the scenarios. And it's actually a really fun, fairly light game for something that is going to run, 6 hours, 8 hours maybe, for a longer scenario. So, I think it's something that's decent for people who maybe like a Civilization type game. They don't really want to play something that's complex, but they don't mind playing something that takes more than 20 minutes or whatever Euros take these days. This was a game that I wanted so badly when I first heard about it, and I was so pleased when I finally got it. It took me, I think, a couple of years to actually manage to find it even. And that was new. I mean, it was still available supposedly through SPI, but it was really hard. They were out of stock, but other people had it, stores, etc. Guy in California found it for me and sent it to me. Complete Strategist didn't have it. And I think it's lasted its time well. I think it's still a good game. I don't think there's much like it. The one game that's most like it is completely derived from it, something called Sword in the Stars, also by SPI. Nowhere near as much fun in my view. It's not just the flavor. I love space games. It's just they've made some little design decisions in it that really disturb me. For one thing, they don't have the cards. Okay, let's talk about the components. The cards are the big negative. They're really, really crappy and pick up grease stains very easily. Standard SPI cards. Countermix, there ain't enough. But otherwise, I think it's okay. I think it's very pretty. I like the map a lot. I think it serves a better purpose. I initially had real misgivings about the map, but I've grown very used to it, and I don't think one that handled areas directly, as the new version does, would be as pleasing to me. Alright, overall, like I said, this is the top game out of the ones I've played so far, mainly for historical reasons, in the sense that I've had it so long in my life, and it's been such a big part of my gaming over the years. It doesn't get as much playtime now, and part of that's just the number of games I have. But part of it is, there's only so many times you can play a game. I mean, it is similar each time. Alright, I'm gonna let this one go, but it's a great game with multiple people especially.